Greetings, nerds. This is CNN Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, Sarah. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. And I feel like I'm on an extended 2021 where, like, the new year hasn't hit me yet.
Well, I'm just glad we were able to record. I know you've been caught up with, like many people, with some of the travel woes that's hit the planet. So I'm glad we were able. Yeah.
I've been stuck in Reno for the past week after a
Yeah.
week of being in Reno.
Yeah.
So it's just great.
Yeah.
Hopefully I get to go home tomorrow. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed for sure. Fingers crossed for sure.
Yeah, and that's kind of why we're really the last podcast on the planet to talk about Spider-Man, because the weather. We had this all planned. I hope everyone knows. We wanted to talk about it. Will went to see it. I had plans to see it, and then what happened? A snowstorm.
Yeah.
And as much as I love Spidey and wanted to see this movie, I was not going to risk my life to go see it.
Yeah, and I did not want you to risk your life to go see it. I was like, no, it's fine. We'll catch it. I figured you catch it in Reno, and then we could talk about it. So
yeah, definitely. But before we jump into that, we do have some interesting news. I don't know if this came up today or earlier this week, but the CW is up for sale.
Yeah. This broke like late last night. Where I guess so the CW has been around, I guess, since like the mid-aughts. It came about when I guess CBS and Warner Brothers bought the old UPN from Paramount, and so they are looking to sell the network to potential bidders. And of course, I think the company that has been sort of the front runner, at least that's out there right now, is Nexstar, which owns like almost 200 television stations in the country. They're like the largest one, and they're like the largest television station owner in the country, and in big markets like New York, Los Angeles, Washington, etc. So this is definitely big news that it will have, clearly have some impact. And I think part of the reason why this sale is happening is because the CW just isn't profitable for CBS and Viacom anymore, and Warner Brothers anymore. So part of the reason is they used to have a deal at Netflix, and that deal expired, I think, about a year or so ago. So yeah, so like a lot of the legacy CW shows like The Flash and Smallville and All America and some of those others, they'll still show up on Netflix, but it's just because, based off of that old deal.
Right.
And so, so all the new shows like that's coming out, like Walker and Naomi, which starts, and Superman and Lois, Batwoman. Well, actually, Batwoman is an odd one because I think it came right around the end of the deal. So like, all those things are like, many of those properties will go to like the producing network, which, like the aforementioned ones, like Batwoman, Superman, and Lois, Naomi will probably end up on HBO Max when it goes to streaming, and they have been going to streaming there. And then Walker, of course, I think goes to probably show up on Paramount Plus because that's owned by Viacom. So yeah, so it's definitely something that's going to happen. What will happen with the new ownership whenever they do take over? I mean, clearly they will probably change some of the focus of the network, so that the CW as we know it will probably be coming to an end here in the near future.
Well, it kind of came to an end in 2019.
Yeah,
I don't know. Ever since, I like some of the stuff that's coming out of the CW, but I do feel that they got a bit stuck, and they weren't reinventing, and they just got tied to shows, and I think that it'll be interesting to see what happens under the new management for sure. But I'm also not surprised.
Yeah.
Because the ratings for a lot of these shows, they were fine. They weren't anything spectacular though.
Right.
And the whole point about like the Netflix deal ending makes sense because for a long time, all shows wanted to do was make it to 5 seasons because that's when syndication, and now streaming services is basically syndication.
Yeah, exactly.
So you want that. I remember earlier this summer, EW started to do these panels for
Mhm.
each season of the Vampire Diaries. And I'm like, what? That show like ended a while ago, and then I was listening to some of them, and they were talking about how a lot of fans discovered the show because it was on Netflix during
Mhm.
COVID.
Yeah.
And so that's where syndication lives, and how these shows, even after they end, can still have an audience,
Right.
because when you're bored and trapped in Reno, what else are you gonna?
Yeah, but to that point too, I think that makes sense for like Nexstar too, as far as there of course a lot of these shows will clearly remain with either CBS, Viacom, or Warner, but there is a CW Seed which has a lot of content on it that's free. That's a streaming app, and then some of the other shows that are being produced by the network that may still be able to stay on there. It'll give the new organization clear opportunities to have built-in programming already in place, and then you're talking about ratings, and clearly a lot of those shows that probably if they had been on, say, Fox or some other network would not have made it to season 2, let alone even
Right.
even past the mid-season pickup point because
Right.
of just the ratings. So some of those struggling shows that still get renewed on CW as it currently exists may not have that long rope that with a new ownership group. So yeah, it's definitely a game changing thing for this network, and it'll be interesting to see how it proceeds, and what programs remain on there, and which ones will go to maybe end up on HBO Max or Paramount Plus or some other the parent company platforms.
Yeah, and hopefully by the time that is all figured out, Morbius will at least have been in
Oh
theaters.
gosh.
Like, hopefully, this
Hopefully.
movie that nobody wanted and that we've seen multiple trailers for, and that for some reason just keeps getting pushed back, pushed back,
Mm-hmm.
pushed back. Which is weird because of the success Spider-Man has had. Like,
Yeah.
why aren't you shooting? Like, what is happening here?
Exactly.
Is it really that bad? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you guys
It's
released Venom, so how bad can it be?
exactly. This movie is getting into like New Mutants territory. I think it actually surpassed the number of times New Mutants got moved. So,
Yeah. So now it's April.
yeah, April
Or is
1.
that like some weird April? Okay, April Fool's joke. Got
Yeah.
it. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's the current date. But like everything right now with Omicron, everything is just getting canceled or moved around, or production's ending. I saw where Star Trek Picard today actually I think had about 50 cases on set. So they've ended production, and some other shows, and of course Broadway was doing so earlier. The Super Bowl is going to remain in Los Angeles apparently, though. Because there was some questions about whether or not the NFL is going to move it to Dallas, but
Wow.
I did see a story that it is going to remain in LA for right now.
And nobody is allowed to go.
Exactly, probably
Just
not.
like how the Grammys got like indefinitely postponed. I saw that yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff happening, and it just is this weird reminder that it's 2022, and you know what, folks, this whole pandemic is not over.
Yeah, exactly.
Like we're now 2 years further away from 2020, and yet 2020 continues.
Yeah. I kind of a gallows humor is like it's the sequel no one asked for.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know. Like, do you want to talk about Spider-Man or Cobra Kai first?
Let's do Spider-Man first.
Do Spider-Man. Okay. All right. So what were your thoughts on it?
So, I was able to watch it. I watched it twice, and first time I watched it, I came out of the theater with it being loving it. I mean, I was didn't think it exceeded Spider-Verse, but it was damn close. But it was very close. It was like 1A kind of deal for me. I did feel like, as far as MCU Marvel films, I felt like it, for me at least my list as of when I first watched it. I guess that was December 19th or 20th. It was like in my top 5. It's still, and then after watching it the second time, I pretty much reinforced my gut reaction. I did not have any kind of drop off, even though I knew like what was coming and all the twists and turns and surprises, and Toby and Andrew really showing up and all. I still felt all those surprises, and and also just being in a theater, like one of these event movies, when everyone in the audience gasped whenever certain things happen, because it reminded me as I was watching it, not everyone's like you and me who like follow this stuff closely. A lot of people just go into these things cold and not knowing about the leaked photos that John Campea put out and all that kind of stuff. And I saw those photos, but even with that, it did not. Whenever Andrew first showed up on the screen, I still had that big goofy nerd grin, because I was like, because it just worked. And
right.
And so, because prior to the film, you and I both talked like, how are they going to, we heard the rumors. How, if it does end up happening, how are they going to do it? And
we didn't just hear the rumors. There were what felt as though 2 years of speculation about what was going to happen in No Way Home. Like, the headlines wouldn't stop.
Yeah, exactly. It got very annoying.
Yeah, so it's just it was ridiculous, but but as we were saying.
Yeah, what were your initial thoughts?
My initial thoughts, this is a great movie. It's just a good movie. I mean, the trailers, I still think they give way too much. I don't like how you had that line in that second trailer about the villains all having been ghosts. And so some of the stuff that was happening in the beginning, I was like, okay, I get what they're doing. And then I wasn't surprised. Like, even though I kind of, I guess maybe it's because I saw it a bit later than everyone else, that I kind of had this idea, okay, they're going to be in the movie.
Yeah.
But the biggest surprise, and the thing that I'm glad there was no indication was there were actually a few things.
Okay.
Just how badass the Green Goblin was.
Yes.
The Green Goblin Spider-Man fights is some of the best fight choreography I've seen in a while. Both the first and second fight, I was just like, wow.
Yeah.
Also, when did Green Goblin get super strength? I didn't know that. When did that happen? Maybe I need to rewatch the first movie, but it was definitely that. And then obviously the crown jewel and why this movie works is that they killed May.
Yeah, that was my
Aunt May.
Yep, that was my
Whew, did not see that coming. And when it happened and why, and we were talking about this, I think, before with some of the trailers, is that the Tom Holland Spider-Man saga has been good. It's been solid. But I love to refer to this episode of What If. the Spider-Man episode of What If is really the zombie episode.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as Aunt May died, I was like, this is now Spider-Man. Like we finally have it, because yes, Tony died, but Tony also died in a different movie. He was kind of this figure not overshadowing, but it's not the same as having a character like an Uncle Ben or a Gwen Stacy. And unfortunately, we never really see Uncle Ben. He always gets killed in the first movie.
Right.
But it was such a smart decision to use Aunt May, because nobody would expect that.
No.
But for it to make sense, because you needed that loss that could be also felt by viewers, to really make us understand who this character is. And then like the sacrifice at the end of it was just beautiful. So
yeah, I thought of you when the first time I watched the film, it was so hard not to say anything to you,
right.
because I was like, because one, I know obviously I honored my commitment. I didn't say anything to you at all about the film.
You did. He was very good.
Yeah, and but that May moment, I thought about it that immediately when it happened. I mean, I choked up in the theater, because it was just like, because Holland just sold it so well. I mean, give the man an Oscar type level, whenever he type of performance there. And I'm not merely being, speaking of hyperbole. I mean, I think because I started thinking about my losses and that scene, and just like, and how Marissa Tomei as well. I mean, she, how well, you were thinking like, okay, maybe she's going to be okay. But then you realize like, oh, Goblin, like the glider got her. Right. And we're not going to have the ending. And like you said, turning the, moment that we've all known about Spider-Man in Uncle Ben loss, but switching it now to May and giving that, and you're so right about we've gotten to know Aunt May through the two films, as well as I think did we see her in any other properties, or was just
I think she might have accompanied Peter to Tony's memorial in Endgame.
I
think she might have.
Yeah, I think you're right. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really just the three movies where, I mean, she's she's an archetype character. Like you have Peter Parker, you have Aunt May. Yeah. And Ben dies.
Yeah, Ben dies. We all know that story.
Supposed to die.
Yeah. May's not exactly, and just the reaction of that, and then of course the decision of at the end where Peter and Happy are standing there at a grave, and just how that scene played out, because Peter's standing there, knowing all the history there, but not only with May and Happy, but May, Happy, Tony, the whole suit, all the things that happened. It was just such a emotional moment, and you really, like you said, with the What If episode with the zombie episode, and how the losses that Peter had. I mean, it just really magnifies what Spider-Man's about.
Yeah, I think, I mean, to go back to your point about Tom Holland. If RDJ can get an Oscar didn't he get an Oscar nomination for Iron Man, or was it just Golden Globe?
I think it was just Golden Globe.
Okay, so if RDJ can get that, then Tom Holland should at least get a Golden Globe nomination for his performance, because you're the second person I've heard who has experienced grief and loss, who immediately watched his performance and said, "Yep, that's exactly what it is." Yeah. And I fortunately have not had that experience, but I felt it. I didn't cry because I'm dead inside. But but it worked. And to go back to to go back to Toby and Andrew,
Mm.
the thing, them being brought in, I thought was cool because in the trailers, there is a line that is so typical. The whole, you can't be both the hero and Peter Parker simultaneously.
Mhm.
And we've had this discussion with all of the shows we've talked about, like the dual identity.
Mhm.
And this movie, I think, does it perfectly. The whole, I like in the background, just this whole thing about dual identity. And what I liked about how they brought in was not just like, oh, I need to find Peter Parker, but the fact that Andrew was dressed up in the suit
Mhm.
when we meet him, and Toby was just Peter Parker.
Yeah. Oh,
I
yeah.
thought that was brilliant. I was like, I like that. I like
Mhm.
that because they're not both in the suit. They're not both Peter Parker. And you can tell with like the little information we are given about what has happened to them since their last movie. Like Andrew, with the loss of Gwen Stacy, he completely, like, Spider-Man takes over his whole identity.
Yeah.
And then I think Toby is the opposite, where he's found a balance, but he almost leans more into just being Peter Parker because he's old. He's very old.
Mhm.
Um, very
It's
old.
like mid 40s Spider-Man.
Yeah,
Peter 2. Peter
yeah.
2.
He's got back issues. He's gonna
Yep.
even have worse back issues now. But I like that. I'm mad because I was listening to other people react to the trailers, and of course, the whole Andrew saving MJ moment was kind of like, okay, that's a bit. I get it. Okay,
Yeah.
it's his
Yeah.
redemption moment. Okay, so it didn't have that moment, but I like the chemistry.
Yeah, I like that moment. I think the thing with the Andrew moment is we and you and I speculated that it was probably going to be the case as well.
Right.
And but I think it's just the way, the look on Andrew's face when he did save MJ was it's just something that, it was just, it was conveyed that sense of like, I I don't want to say closure because I hate when people say closure, but it was like I was able, I accomplished what I had intended to do before,
Right.
and it was a more, I guess it was a more cathartic look of whenever he rescued MJ in this film, uh, so that now he can start to, because we there are some lines that he had in the film that really showed that after that loss with Gwen, he went down a real dark path, and he was
Yeah.
and he probably did some, like sort of like thinking of like Hawkeye and Ronin. It sounds like in his universe, he did some really messed up shit that he's probably going to have to, he's going to have to come out of and deal with. But I think that catharsis that he had of saving MJ really will open that door for him to make amends and come to peace with that loss and hopefully get back on track to get that balance that, like you said, when we first saw him. And I hadn't really thought about that, but you're right. When we first encounter Peter 2 and Peter 3, they are like you said, Peter 3 is in his Spider-Man costume, and Peter 2 is looks like a youth pastor. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And I quote, "Youth pastor for sure."
Yep.
Yeah, I liked their banter.
Mhm.
They had a good chemistry on screen. Um, and then and speaking about chemistry, like the whole build of the MJ and Peter Parker dynamic
Mhm.
and romance has just been really good. And because I like how now we can look back retrospectively as like these three movies all together, because initially they weren't even a thing really in the first movie. They
Right.
weren't.
They weren't.
And then in the second movie, we started noticing, and now the third movie, and granted, we all know they're together in real life, but they really worked. And Zendaya, her portrayal of MJ in this movie really worked. Really worked for me. And it's a hard role to do because it's so easy to kind of not be that emotional core for the hero, and to just be the damsel in distress. But she wasn't. She really walked that line. So
it was my I think it was my of the three films. I think for me this portrayal worked the best for me.
I think,
but
she had to grow. It makes sense of. I again, to go back to the May moment, and I think across the board why this movie works is because we've grown with virtually all of these characters.
Yeah, we have even Flash.
So, even Flash. Like you're and that's kind of the point, I guess, of why they said, we know everybody doesn't want this, but we are going to start with Peter Parker in high school. Because there's a lot of growth that happens. And if you look at the three movies, you can't have No Way Home without having the first two. Which is another thing that I think is a rarity, especially in trilogies. Because I don't think one is magnificently like less than the others. I think they work, but they work really well together. Go figure.
They do.
Even though Spider-Man doesn't know how to be on a team. But what were your thoughts about Green Goblin?
I really, really enjoy Willem Dafoe's portrayal of Green Goblin because, one, just the in-universe like acknowledgement that this damn mask just doesn't work, and he crushes it.
Yeah.
But it's just the things that happened. That it was not only the verbal things, but the nonverbal things. Like whenever he is at the mission with Aunt May, and May and Peter are talking, and the box of donuts, where he's like taking the donuts and stuff, and all those little nonverbal cues were really like gave such greater depth to him as a villain that I don't recall. I mean, that yes, they were there some in the original the Raimi film. But but he does. I mean, but this performance and this version of the Green Goblin actually it pops a whole heck of a lot more. And I think over time I will remember this version that we saw in No Way Home a whole heck of a lot more than some of the moments that I saw in the Raimi version back in the day.
Yeah, It is amazing to me how I think in a lot of these Spider-Man movies, the villains have been the weak parts.
Sandman.
They haven't really done what they were supposed to do. And yet this movie, in one movie, they kind of fixed all of the issues, or at least addressed the issues viewers had.
Well, I mean, like Sandman, for example. I mean, I was like, oh yeah, I mean, they actually made him interesting in this film.
They made them interesting, and at the core, they're still like this goofy villain and everything, but now they're in present day, and I'm sure other reactors have articulated this better, but I think that overall why this movie works so well is because just the characters' interactions, and just it felt right. Everything. I can't think of any point that was wasted. Like I don't think there was a sequence. It's a long movie, but to me, I was like, oh, it's over. Okay.
Yeah, I was in.
I remember the freeway fight. I was like, we're here already? What?
Yeah.
This is still the first act. What's happening?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I know some reactors had some issue with some how things started out with the film, as far as the reveal and Peter and MJ when
Which
they get
makes
back
no
to their
sense.
park. Yeah.
Which makes no sense because I guess, yeah, that apartment thing, but at the end of the day, you need all of that because that's what leads us to that sacrifice at the end of it.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, there's no such thing as a perfect film, but this comes pretty close. I mean, overall, this was a very solid film. I think it definitely was the culmination of the three different Spider-Men and their
yeah,
legacies. And, I think clearly Andrew Garfield has had his moment, really had his moment to shine. And I know I was reading a thing where today he said he actually improvised the line, "I love you guys," the brothers thing. And, that, yeah. And that was sold. I mean, I felt like, as, having watched the original trilogy, Andrew's two films, which, I even said, I mean, I barely remember The Amazing Spider-Man 2. and,
mm-hmm.
and now Tom's trilogy. I mean, it really, it pulled it all together. We had our pointing Spider-Man moment, a couple times in the film. The first time in the lab, which I thought was beautiful. That's the first time they did it.
Yep.
The meme was like, yes, I like cracked up as soon as I saw it, because I was like, we got it. And the little moments with Ned, and as far as with the Hobgoblin, and where it referenced Harry Osborn,
Doctor Strange.
I mean, yeah, we haven't even talked about Strange and the fault, his role in all of this, and go Scooby-Doo the shit. And I mean, also thinking back to Wong being the Sorcerer Supreme now, and
Right.
thinking about how that makes sense. The little bit we saw of Wong and Shang-Chi, how that all ties into what's to come. So I mean, so not only did it the story bring it into this particular story of arc of Peter, but obviously, like all these Marvel films, it's just springboards for so many additional things in state and phase 4 of the MCU on the Disney side. So
Yeah, it's amazing. A lot of these Spider-Man movies, if we look back at it, the big criticism is that, like, Batman Robin criticism of, okay, how many villains do you need?
Mm-hmm.
Well, No Way Home kind of shows, okay, for every 2 villains, you must have 1 hero.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Equal it out, and then suddenly it works. And another thought that I had was, just to end it, is like, Warner Brothers, I would be really mad right now, because I know this whole Flash thing is about the Flash, but you got multiple Batman. I don't think they're going to be able to do with those Batman what No Way Home does with Spider-Man.
Yeah, they won't be. Well, according to Grace Randolph, they were like completely changing the thing anyway. So.
Oh, well, it's DC and Warner Brothers, so I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah.
And I, we were talking right before seeing the movie, about Tom saying, like, this is the end of the trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes so much sense why he would say that, because it's the end of this trilogy. But that black goo, we could get the Venom trilogy that we actually do want.
Yep, we could get that, but yeah, you're right. We could definitely get that Venom trilogy. And the other thing, this is my last thought on it, was the other thing that I think really drove the film home for me was how it ended, with not the end trailers and stuff, but not and the goo, but we see Peter where we the film ends where many fans meet him in that little dinky apartment off near Rockefeller Center, and he has the original that original red and blue costume.
Yep.
And I just clapped when that moment happened in the theater, because it's like that's where we meet him. I mean, that's when you think of Spider-Man, that's where many fans first encountered him, thinking about the cartoon or the comic book or wherever. So.
Yep, definitely. And we will meet him again, because if Sony screws up this, I will never watch a Sony movie.
Yeah, I don't think so. That's the highest grossing film ever. They're like, we ain't messing this up, y'all.
Well, Sony never surprises me.
Yeah, Amy Pascal. Amy Pascal. She may have to throw another sandwich to Kevin Feige, but I'm sure he will make sure that they don't screw it up.
Yeah. Just make sure Venom is a trilogy and not just one movie, okay?
Yeah.
All right. And on that note, we're going to move over to the Cobra Kai Season 4 discussion, where I just talk about how much I continue to despise Sam as a character. And...
not a brother? I mean, oh boy. Yeah.
See, for some reason, he pretty bad, but she just continues to be like, I'm like, really, I don't understand why they make her act all tough in one scene and then like a angel princess in the other. It's so annoying.
Yeah.
I will say though, overall, I thought Season 4 is better than Season 3.
Yep.
By a long shot.
Mm-hmm.
I think there wasn't a lot of wasted time. I thought there was a lot of wasted time in Season 3. And I did not see the ending coming. But I was like, okay, I see what you did there. Very clever.
Now which ending with
the one with Kreese.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. That was I like the way that occurred, because you're right. This season was very tight as far as storytelling, with this series. One thing I think since Season 1, you just sort of have to walk into Cobra Kai, suspend your they have by this point, and if you made it to Season 4 with this series, they have the built-in assumption that you have suspended all disbelief way back in Season 1 with the way that the kids do the karate. So that being said, you're right. I agree with you. This season definitely was definitely much better than 3. I got back from my holiday vacation like Saturday after evening, started it. Next thing I knew was like started at 9. Next thing I looked up, it was like 1. And I was like, crap, I gotta go to bed, because I just, it was really, this season really sucked me in, and I was just like, I just had to like stop, because I needed to get some sleep because it was really, I felt like it was a lot of really strong momentum that built in each episode, and because we've been and what's great about this series to me is, yes, the evolution of the story. And I was reading, I think, where the actor who plays Kreese was talking about how whenever he learned that they were bringing in Silver, he was kind of like, wait a minute, I'm the villain,
right?
But it was necessary, because I mean, I guess going back to Karate Kid 3, I mean, the reason why Martin Kove couldn't do it the first time around is because he had committed to another film, and they wouldn't let him film the third movie. So that's why they brought in Thomas Ian Griffith to play Silver. But fast forward to present day, that's why I liked about this series is they're not just, yes, they're rehashed, the rivalry and all that stuff is getting rehashed, but they're bringing in all these characters and this and really expanding on this universe and really adding depth to the characters. that.
Right. The reason why season 1 works so well is because it's just on this premise. No, Johnny's a good guy.
Yep.
With all of his faults, he's actually the protagonist in the story.
Mhm.
Danny's the the anti-villain person who you have to have Danny in Karate Kid, of course.
Yeah.
But it really, because there was all that conversation about how no, Johnny's actually the hero in Karate Kid. If you look, and it's all perspective, and so the fact that they were able to do that with bringing in this other sensei, and by the end of it, having Kreese also try to almost change the same way that Danny and Johnny were getting in their own way with how they were training the kids. Kreese recognized he was doing the same thing, and then you see, oh, okay, well, if you're not going to be the villain, then I'll be the villain of this story. And it was funny because I was wondering, I'm like, wow, you're bringing back Stingray.
Yeah.
And then he gets beat up, and then but you forget about it. The timing of that whole thing was done very well, where by the time you get to it, so much has happened that you forgot that he woke up from a coma at the very beginning of the episode. So, and then you're like, okay, I see what's going on here. Smart.
Very. Yeah.
Miguel's departure. Okay, I got a few thoughts about Miguel.
All right, let's hear them.
I love this actor. I do. I'm very excited for Blue Beetle. I'm very excited. Yeah. Is it just me, or did he put on some weight? I don't know why, but I was thinking the whole time, I'm like, interesting. This is weird.
Yeah.
But he also just looked tired.
Yeah.
He looked tired the entire season, where I'm just thinking, dude, you are so checked out. You are so ready to move on to Blue Beetle.
If he's weary. He's weary of having to deal with this. But it's interesting you say you look checked out and look weary. But I think that was to looking at the story and where he ends up and does have the injury during the All Valley tournament. That weariness was he was just tired of this back and forth between Cobra Kai and Eagle Fang and Miyagi-Do. I mean, I think it was as much. I don't know if it was intentional or wariness or weariness, but I think the fact that you picked up on that, I think that explains why that whenever the moment came, he was like, he had that moment where he's like, who am I fighting for?
Well, yeah, I mean that we saw that coming the moment like him and Johnny after being beat up, is like thanks Robbie, or whatever he said about Robbie, and Miguel, that's what broke everything for Miguel, and now, of course, I'm just curious, does this mean we're not going to see Miguel until the end of next season? And then we're going to get the reveal about who the father is? Please don't let it be Danny. That would be really weird.
No. I think that sounds like that would be very weird. I think I think if I recall Miguel's mother, I think the guy sounds like he's a drug lord or something. So, because you gotta have some. Again, we're talking a series where you have to have all complete suspension of disbelief. So Miguel's dad,
but
he's going to be like this.
Someone from the franchise, though. It's got to be someone from the franchise.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, it's possible. I mean, I can't remember. I didn't see the Hilary Swank movie one, so I can't. So maybe it has to be you're right though. It will be someone from the franchise, but I just don't know who, because I just can't remember all those side characters.
Which is fine. I mean, it just, the way they had that moment at the end, I'm like, okay, it's going to be someone from the franchise. We just don't know who yet. This kid has to go and shoot a superhero movie, so I don't think we're going to see him.
Well, I
which
think they're filming. Well, yeah, but yeah, I think they're filming season 5 now. But I did see where he was talking about trying on the Blue Beetle suit. So yeah, you're right. I don't know if students' shooting schedules will sync up.
yeah. I liked Eli surprised me.
Yeah.
This season. I liked at the end allowing him to win.
Mm-hmm.
I knew Tori would win. I was not expecting the whole cheating thing to have occurred.
Yeah.
But I like what they're doing with her character. And Robbie is just Robbie. I have similar issues with Robbie character at this point as I do with Sam's character, where I'm just like, okay, what's happening here?
Yeah. I don't know if I was watching. Maybe it was Christian Harloff's spoiler review of Cobra Kai or maybe it was, I can't remember who it was, but whatever review I was watching compared Robbie and all this to Star Wars, and the whole Anakin, then Luke, and the whole arc that we saw with Luke and Anakin Skywalker, in particular Anakin Skywalker, starting out good, go to the bad side, and then at the end, now he's starting to see the light. And we're seeing the same thing with Robbie, where he was like started off good, got turned to the dark side, and then at the end, we're seeing the redemption of Robbie. He'll, of course, he's going to go off to Mexico with his dad to help, try to find Miguel's father.
Yeah, but I don't think Robbie needs to be redeemed for a lot. Yeah, he kicked Miguel and Miguel's like that whole fight, but that fight wasn't instigated by Robbie. That was instigated by Sam.
By Sam, yep.
Root of all evil. So I don't really necessarily agree with that. Like he's got father issues, and so to an extent there's a lot of father issues in Star Wars. But I think he's always been good. He's just been he's been kind of confused about, or not even confused. I mean, what does the kid have going for him? He's been kicked out of school.
Yeah.
And we don't see that he has a job. So my next question is, what does he do all day?
He works at Cobra Kai. I mean, that's his job. I guess he's
like, why are they not encouraging him to at least get his GED? I mean,
right? Yeah. Well,
they're just so focused on this competition.
Yeah.
Like, what are the kids supposed to do after the whole competition?
Yeah. Well, I think this is. I think this series shows how Gen Xers have basically fucked up the world, because they're doing that now with the kids.
Wow, you went there. Wow.
But when you think about it, I mean, we have these 40-somethings, all and 60-somethings with Kreese and Silver. So you get your baby boomers. We gotta get the boomers in there too. And they're self-absorbed, like, obsession over a karate tournament, and then they're like forcing this issue on their kids, all these kids who are, to fight their battles. It's like the football. I think about growing up and seeing like the sports dad or mom who, like, didn't realize, forcing their unrealized dreams or something on their kid to, like, excel on the football field or basketball court or whatever, because
right.
It's that kind of dynamic, and it's so toxic, and we're seeing that kind of manifest in this show. And so so I think it's one of the things that I think they're really holding up the mirror in the show in some regard, is like, and now at least now Johnny and Daniel are starting to see it. And they're trying to break that cycle.
But I feel like at the end of every season, they start to see it and they come back together, only for within the first 3 episodes them to be like, yeah, this will never work out.
Yeah. That is, it is a part of the trope.
Every season. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, well, they're saying it now because it works, but who knows? I mean, they don't seem to be learning too much.
Yeah, true.
It's not a lot of self accountability, and I was honestly thinking about how this season Danny's son is much more prevalent, and you see how he's being a bully, very much like his sister, which just makes me think this is genetic. Okay. Yeah. The child psychologist even said, you two have interesting reactionary responses that your children have observed, and that's their whole thing.
Yeah.
And so until Danny just admits, yeah, maybe he was mean to Johnny in high school too. Yep. I think that's how this series will end. Yep. Danny will just say, yeah, I think I was the villain.
Yep.
In at least Johnny's story. I mean, like, we're all our own hero. But in somebody else's story, we can be the villain.
Yep.
But yeah, another Cobra Kai season. I saw the numbers. This show isn't going anywhere anytime soon.
No.
And it's not bad. I like the December drops. So it's a good kind of breeze to get through.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, anything else, Will?
No, I think as I said, I really enjoyed it. One other real quick little aside. I mean, it's not a big thing, but we saw Sam went up to the hills to see her friend, which we didn't. She was, oh gosh, what's her name? The African American girl. I can't remember because she wasn't in season 3 at all, and everybody was like, where is she? And so I like that they brought that back in and had her, talk some sense into Sam. And then of course, the other big thing, I think, talk about growth and everything in the heroes of their own story. But I do think we really have seen a great evolution of Johnny over the course of the 4 seasons, and you're right. I mean, I think to close my thoughts out, we probably will see at the end that, at the end of the day, Daniel was really the bully in all this.
Maybe
he wasn't as innocent as he was made out to be.
Yeah. I just, that made me think of the line in the finale where Danny tells Sam like no, Johnny's gonna coach you too. And they're trying to convince her like she can do it both ways, and Johnny's just like, yeah, your dad's right some of the time.
Yep.
Like, nice. All right, well, on that note, Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me at Will M. Polk. That's WILLM POLK on Twitter.
You can find me at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on Twitter at SNN Nerd. Friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and visit our website, www.snnnerdpodcast.com. But most importantly, rate, follow, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Good night, geek out. You're welcome.